I don't watch anime, but I've seen Cowboy Bebop. How many times have you heard that one?
Can't live
Oh, well.
without them. I knew I should
Whatever
give up.
happens,
I'm only 18.
happens.
I don't want to die yet.
All right, and we are back. Hello again, YouTube. We're gonna be diving back into our nostalgic reacts. We're actually gonna be diving into some anime now. So one definitely near and dear. Probably has to be like all-time favorite. Like there are like the recent anime that are like more of my favorites right now. But like as far as like the tried and true like evergreen list, like this is definitely in my like top three, if not number one. And that's gonna be Cowboy Bebop, baby. All right, first we're gonna be diving into Bonsai Pop, the wild history behind Cowboy Bebop. I've gushed enough over one of my favorite things, so let's see what someone else has to say. That's working.
Spike Spiegel sounds like the stage name of an overly goth clarinet player, but luckily the clarinet is pretty damn essential to jazz, and jazz is integral to Cowboy Bebop. Bebop
Yes.
is known as a gateway
One of
anime. When a baby otaku
Oh my god, I mean, yeah, gateway anime for sure. I mean, it was on Toonami initially and all that. Like, it was one of those prime time anime influences for most of like that initial generation of like wave of like anime to the Western media. Um, and its soundtrack being so heavily jazz influenced and having so much jazz in it, and like shaped a lot of like my music talent from that like point on. Like I love hearing a good horn, a good like a good wind instrument go through. Oh my god, it just hits you. Somebody blaring on a horn in there somewhere in the background just going fucking crazy. Just does something to my spine. Um, but but yeah, just an amazing OST. Like, especially in the aspect of like when it comes to animes, like you usually get your like OSTs where it's like more like rock themed oriented and everything as well. Like rock, yeah, I'd say rock popish styles if in most cases. Definitely not jazz if anything. And you have your like rare occurrences where it's like jazz, hip hop, and all that with like Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, Afro Samurai, the black ones. But I mean Gangsta was pretty good as well. But anyway, again, it still seems like as far as the theming goes. But just everything from soundtrack, character design, world building, and everything. Like they didn't really explain much of like the actual world. Like a lot of animes, you get like that whole introduction of like, oh, and this is the world of blah 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 in the year blue blue blue. Like they leave that all up into like into like the world building and narrative. It's like you see like it's this dystopian futuristic like cyberpunk-esque western where it's like a mixture of like a western and cyberpunk where you've got these cowboy bounty hunters, but they're all running down run down ass equipment, even though the equipment is fucking space technology. Like it, but it's still like somehow old in the aspect and beat down in comparison to what I guess like a brand new would be. And like the story and character development that they go through, the characters of the Bebop, Spike, it's just
wannabe is looking for some
Master.
recommendations to get into the scene, no one is telling them to start with FLCL, you know? It's all about losing
I mean,
yourself
I
in the
might be
world
telling
of
them to start with
Cowboy Bebop,
FLCL.
diving deep into an abundance of genres all mixed together to mold something entirely unique for its time. Noir storytelling, 40s jazz, country westerns, romantic action, mystery, tragedy, sci-fi, Cowboy Bebop has something for everyone, and everyone has a bone for telling people who haven't watched it that they need to. I'd argue it is the classic anime choice for the majority of anime enthusiasts, with many a dedicated weeb ensuring they watch it at least once a year. But 1998, that was a long time ago, coming up on 25 years, and I can't name another anime with the same kind of staying power, cultural relevance, and consistency of Cowboy Bebop. Alright, maybe Evangelion, but that show has its own part to play in this story, promise. But if there's one anime that has a level of appreciation that trumps any other, it's definitely Cowboy Bebop. When something permeates the collective consciousness of a cultural zeitgeist so completely that even people outside that populace are fans of it, then something beyond the obvious, it's really good, is happening behind the scenes. There's a reason for that popularity that goes beyond good writing and animation, and Bebop is not just viewed as one of the greatest because it was great during its time. There's tons of classic anime, Trigun, Outlaw Star, Lupin III, Mobile Suit Gundam, Urusei Yatsura, I mean, pick your poison, but none of them hold a candle to Cowboy Bebop's reign as the must-watch classic, let alone the must-watch anime. Even Azusa Matsuda, the vice president of the Society for the Promotion of Japanese Animation, has said,
"If you haven't watched
Anime
Cowboy
Expo.
Bebop, then you're not a true anime fan. It's like a badge you have to earn."
and I know a lot of weird boomers who would echo that statement. No matter how you cut it, Cowboy Bebop is a defining show for the entire medium. I'd consider it the most influential show to modern anime, save maybe Neon Genesis Evangelion. But why was it so influential? What did Cowboy Bebop do that no one else has ever been able to replicate? Sci-fi had been done, westerns were already a thing. It's not like it did anything particularly new.
But it did everything to such a high degree that everything just hits and melts so well. There should be no reason why a noir cyberpunk western drama works so well. Like a bounty hunter noir styled comedic western based in a dystopian future, cyberpunk future, like, but still somehow based in a western-ish society where, like, you know, cowboys and shit are like, you know, bounty hunting and everything is like the theme, even though they're space age, and it all just fits and works so well. Like, you've got fucking his swordfish, like it's like a cat. No, it's not a cat. Like it's like, I forget what brand, but it's like it's like an actual like car brand that you would have like a old race car type style. Like just like the way that they built around the character and the world itself is just unmatched.
Cowboy Bebop is influenced by something else, so how has it kept popularity for 2.5 decades with no sign of slipping? That's what we're going to delve into today, because Cowboy Bebop isn't my favorite anime. It's not even close, but I respect and admire the influence it's had on anime
it doesn't
culture.
have to be your favorite.
This is the story of Cowboy Bebop, the history, choices, and sheer luck that created arguably the most critically acclaimed anime of all time. The year is
Like that's my big thing with like any of like my favorite things. Like that's, and I feel like a big issue in some people and a lot of people in the anime communities have, but like, you know, they hear their favorite isn't your favorite, and they start foaming at the mouth or whatnot, like why it has to be so good. Like even if you don't like even like the show itself, that like any of the shows that I say, because I have some like niche like shows that I love that I'm sure like a lot of people, most people wouldn't really like, whatnot. Like, especially when it comes to like some of these nostalgic animes. Like if y'all have never seen what Big O, that's one that Big O is such a, like, even for people who like watch Gundams, isn't even for like people who watch like a Gundam show, like, because it's more of like that noir style like storytelling. Actually it's mainly that, like, yeah, it's just, um the city of paradigm and all that, but um it's just a whole different aspect when it comes to like that storytelling and everything. um
1998, Google is founded in a garage. Now disgraced Dr. Andrew Wakefield publishes his research that autism is linked to vaccines and sets in motion the anti-vax community that we deal with today. Bill Clinton decides BJs aren't and still gets impeached, and
okay, not where I thought we were going to be going. Okay, let's follow this thread.
Cowboy Bebop airs for the first time.
Okay,
TV
there it is.
Tokyo. 1998 was a crazy year, people, and while TV Tokyo did debut Cowboy Bebop, they chopped it off at the knees.
But yeah, like as far as like just to finish that thought fast, as far as like the anime community is like, yeah, it gets kind of cringe when like you can't even just say like voice your opinion on like if you dislike or like a show or whatever without people start foaming at the mouth or whatever. Like I'll still like whatever I like. Like I said, I have those like niche as animes as well that like most people I feel like probably haven't seen or even would mess with all like that, depending on like how the storytelling that you enjoy or whatever. Because I'll still enjoy it at the end of the day, and like my whole aspect is just like if I can share that whole, because I only care like if you have the interest to divulge it whatnot. So like if I recommend anything to you, it's just because I feel like it'd be something that we both can experience, not necessarily just to like show you like the most popular anime or whatever. You can find that on your own type stuff, but like I'm going to give you like a recommendation that I feel like will suit your needs as well, but also it'll kind of probably be a selfish recommendation because it's probably something that I be wanting to talk about forever. Like, yo, I feel like you'd fuck with this style, this actual story, and I've been waiting to have somebody be addicted to it as much as me. So you've got to watch it now. And it can go either way. But at the end of the day, like I said, like I'll still watch it. I'll rewatch it now and just still enjoy it. Like just because you don't enjoy what the exact same thing someone else does, it's whatever. I mean, but it does get to like that cringe area where like then you've got people who like shit talk every other anime because it's not their anime and whatnot. That's why you just gotta kind of take it in stride.
The network was dealing with the fallout of a few notable media violence incidents, which had broadcasting standards far tighter than normal. With the amount of blood and violence in the show, Cowboy Bebop was left in an uneasy position as to whether or not it would be aired at all. Ultimately, TV Tokyo...
Yeah, that's the crazy, and that's the unfortunate and dope part about it as well, because when Cowboy Bebop initially aired in the US, we didn't get the full series. Like, I think there was like 4 or 5. There's like 2 or 3 episodes that the US didn't get, and I don't think ever got until like a couple years after like the original series aired. But essentially like the last like episode or 2, essentially where you see like that whole Spike and Bish's this like final confrontation and all that, and Spike's whole story arc completion and everything, you miss out on that, and we missed out on that in the first like drop through of the show. It wasn't until like a few years later that they actually released it, but they replaced that episode with an episode that was only aired in Tokyo due to like these restrictions and whatnot, because of like I think it was like some gun violence that was like becoming more rampant or whatnot. They didn't want to show these episodes or whatever, so instead of like the final like episode or 2, they released it was like a compilation of all the episodes up to this point, and like it looked like some like just what's the word, like just like some scenery that we didn't really get. Like it was very like it's like a music video almost. They have like this dope ass song by Chunchi Towers that I have to this day. Let's see if I can find it, because I could not find this song anywhere else but this one episode in like from like the Japanese broadcasting of the like the original drop of the compilation episode or whatnot. There's this fire ass Tucci Tower song, I believe. Where's my shit? I'll find it. If I can play it, I'll put it video here later. But yeah, so like it wasn't until like a few years later that they actually released the whole series due to
Only
those
aired
issues.
12 episodes of Cowboy Bebop, leaving viewers with less than half of the show's full runtime. It's lucky it was aired at all, and I'd wager it's only thanks to the nature of Bebop's episodes having self-contained stories that it got any airtime anyway. Luckily, the Wow Wow Network stepped up 4 months later and released the full 26 episodes uncut, allowing Japanese audiences to see the full splendor of Cowboy Bebop. Contrary to a lot of what you'll find online, Bebop did quite well both commercially and critically in Japan. Before it was ever released in the United States, Cowboy Bebop was winning multiple awards. I mean, look at these awards, there's like 15 flumptillion. But Bebop's success was full of doubt at the outset of its creation. Originally, the project was funded by Bandai's toy division with the goal of selling toy spacecrafts. Cowboy Bebop was truly a trailblazer of sci-fi when it came to anime because there's no hint of mechs in the show. Back in the 90s, you didn't make sci-fi anime without giant robot mechs because you'd never recoup on your investment. See, even today, anime itself makes very little money relative to the investment needed to make it. The three main revenue streams for anime come from international licensing, aka selling the rights to air or stream anime on other platforms outside of Japan, anime-themed pachinko machines, believe it or not, and the biggest by far, anime merchandise. Merchandise is vital to the success of an anime, and here Shinichiro Watanabe was making a sci-fi show without any giant robots in sight. Jonathan Clements, author of Anime
You see the swordfish alone.
The No Giant Robots directive was regarded by some at the time as industrial suicide, since that drastically reduced the likely merchandise tie-ins.
And once Bandai got a look at some of the early footage of Bebop, they completely pulled out of the project because they didn't see it selling any toy merchandise, which would be a huge loss for the company. Bebop was left in development limbo until Bandai Visual, a sister company to the toy division, stepped in to sponsor the project. Unlike Bandai's toy division, Bandai Visual didn't care about merchandise at all. They focused on the distribution enterprise of anime and film, primarily focusing on North America. But even Bandai Visuals wasn't an easy sponsor to get. Watanabe and producer Masahiko Minami had to promise that they would recoup their investment in music spin-offs, which is why Bebop had Yoko Kanno creating the score. With Bandai Visual on board, Bebop's market shifted to heavily focus on North America, aka the United States. And remember, we're talking the 90s here. This was a time when watching anime was nearly impossible unless it was aired on the Toonami block or late night on Sci-Fi, and Toonami had only started a year before Bebop. Other than that, the only Western audience for anime was hardcore otakus that would essentially throw a 20 down to pick up a VHS of something they'd never heard of and hoped it was good. To make it in America, Bebop needed a dub, so enter Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, the ADR or Automated Dialogue Replacement Director and English voice for Julia. It was her job to not botch the dub, which was about as good as you could hope for back then, but in her own words, there was very little pressure.
As good as you could hope for.
Nobody's ever going to see this, so you know what? Let's just make it for us. Let's take it in a different direction from standard anime voice acting, which is very heightened and big. Let's make it much more cinematic and really dive into these characters.
To this day, the direction of McGlynn can be pointed to for why the English dub is still considered one of the best ever produced. Most shows have a...
I mean, I get what you mean by like the anime trope of like characters being loud and grating, but like, wouldn't you hire the actor to best portray the actual story and character that's being written? Like, it makes sense for like all those other characters and people because, you know, they're fucking weird, you know, they're the weird anime people, whatnot. And maybe besides like Ed, could have been like that possibly, and they kind of are sometimes, but not really. Like, they're just odd if anything. But like, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like, as far as like, if you they already had like this story synopsis like given to them, and like possibly like seeing like chapters, at least if this was like the manga initially, you would know like the tone of the story wouldn't really even call for that to begin with. I don't know, but I mean, I'm talking in layman's terms. So what do I know?
To get through because of the budget, but the actors for Cowboy Bebop
Hindsight,
had literally
2020.
no restrictions. McGlynn didn't care how much they got done in a day. It was all about relaxing, having fun with the characters, and most importantly, creating something that they loved. It turned a job into a passion project and a luxury gig at the same time, and the results speak for themselves. It cannot be overstated just how influential the dub was in making Cowboy Bebop a success in the West. To this day, it is praised as one of the best dubs of all time because the voice actors had the time and passion to develop something truly unique in the anime space. To me, Bebop's dub flows with a sense of realism, truth, and maturity, which is very hard to find within this medium. It becomes clear that
Within
the
anime,
audience
yeah.
isn't just little kids, that this is a show for adults, for everybody. It has themes that hit people with life experience, and the performances given represent that to a T. But that adult performance presented its own problems. Like I said earlier, there was nowhere for an adult anime to be aired in the US. Toonami was a kids block first and foremost. It had Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon. It was meant for a younger audience. Despite Jason DeMarco, the co-creator of Toonami, being absolutely obsessed with Cowboy Bebop just from the intro before he ever even saw any of the show itself,
Yeah.
he already knew it would never fit in the Toonami block, and I get that. I was a Toonami viewer in 1998. I was 7 years old. In 2001, when Bebop finally did come to America, I was 10. Cowboy Bebop was not meant for me to watch back then. I did, but I was more interested in Dragon Ball, and Sailor Moon was making me feel things for the first time. I wasn't ready to deal with themes like loneliness or being numb to the world around me. I didn't know what it meant to not feel like I belonged somewhere. Seriously, putting Cowboy Bebop on Toonami would likely have killed the show. They'd have had to gut its contents, take out the more adult episodes and graphic violence. It would have been no better than TV Tokyo airing only the 12 episodes that they did, and that's not what DeMarco
but it
wanted.
did come
because
to
the more he saw of
Toonami
the show,
eventually.
the more he loved it. So instead of cutting it to shreds to get it out as soon as Cartoon Network got their hands on it, DeMarco held on to it because he was in the process of developing a new block of content, something called Adult Swim. Now, we all know Adult Swim. It's a program block specifically dedicated to animated shows for adults. I mean, it's right in the name. Cowboy Bebop was the first ever anime to air during Adult Swim, meaning this was the first time a seinen anime ever had the chance to be broadcast to its correct audience. Before Adult Swim, as McGlynn said, nobody's ever going to see this. This was truly the first chance for a seinen anime to be put in front of the right audience to receive it in America. So naturally, it did absolute gangbusters, right? Well, not exactly. In fact, Cowboy Bebop never was a hit in terms of raw viewership numbers. However, it also wasn't a total flop. And most importantly, DeMarco loved it. So after it aired in 2001, he put it on again in 2002, and again in 2003, and again and again.
We kept airing Cowboy Bebop for 12 or 13 years straight, maybe more. We literally never had it off the air. It was never a hit. It just seemed to do as well as any other anime. We just aired the shit out of it because we loved it, and we didn't particularly care if it got great ratings.
You want to know why everyone...
No, facts. That's all I want. Because I would say, it's like, even coming up, Cowboy Bebop was not like... he started the video talking about like how like everybody talks about, yeah, you need to watch Cowboy Bebop. You need to see Cowboy Bebop. It's like... most anime people I know have seen Cowboy Bebop and probably have had somebody recommend it, or if they had not seen it, like back here on a Toonami/Adult Swim, which also I get like the correlation, because I was like, I always thought it was on Toonami, but it's just because it aired literally right after Toonami came on, and then Adult Swim which would show after that, and then that's where you got Cowboy Bebop and all that on the Saturdays. So yeah. But yeah, I was like, oh, like it made it seem like it was like way more popular, like, cause there was not a lot of people that I knew, especially when people had asked me particularly about like what anime to watch. I was always recommending shit like Cowboy Bebop or Samurai Champloo or whatever, because they were on Toonami / Adult Swim, but for one, that was something that most people missed out on because it aired at fucking 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, at night, whatever. And it just also wasn't like, even looking at it now, obviously it looks old, but even then, it gave off more of that like sci-fi Gundam feel just from the look of it. Like if you just were flipping through channels or whatever and that came on, and that's not something you already were interested in, you most likely just kept swiping through it regardless. Like that was not something you were like really stopping on. I got lucky in the sense because, for one, a lot of my family members, like cousins and whatnot, were already super big into anime and whatnot. And I think at this point, like early or like 2001, when this was like airing on Adult Swim and Toonami, early YouTube was already, YouTube actually. Yeah, because on the Dragon Ball Z was already on like VHS around 97 and 99. So like my cousins had already had like Dragon Ball Z like videos and movies all the time. So I remember like seeing more of that darker style like anime. I mean, obviously Dragon Ball Z isn't like a dark theme, but like as far as like when you're thinking of like being a kid and seeing like scenes from like fucking Planet Namek and like the Frieza saga, um hit Frieza fucking biting everybody. That shit's dark back then, especially like Goku going Super Saiyan and all that. It's a fire ass scene, but as a kid, that shit looks like intense. Um, and that was like more of the stuff that was like pulling most of like the draw. Obviously, Dragon Ball Z, one of if not the biggest anime of all time in the West. That like really brought that modernization to us, and really connected those cables. But Cowboy Bebop it just didn't have that style. It like it because it was like that noir style, like it even looked like it and whatnot. And like so, unless you caught like the right episode where it was like one of those more comedic standpoints, unless you had like a love for like instrumentals and music like that, and that opening caught you, because that's how I got caught instantly. Was that like we were sitting there and like Toonami like did its little sign off and everything, and Adult Swim was starting, and it would always kick off with that theme song. One, two, three, let's go. Like, come on. I was fucking hooked. And then like the colors, everything spinning around, all that, it like instantly hooked me. I could not take my eyes off that screen. And then like the coolest fucking shit ended up, I'm trying to remember if I can remember what episode it was. I think it was the episode with when they first get Ein. So it's like one of like the first few episodes, if not the first episode. No, I think it's a few episodes in, because yeah, they meet Ein, I think around the same time they meet Ed. But I remember it's like it's like this tall ass black guy, that's like the antagonist that whole episode or whatever. But yeah, it never was like one of the ones like anytime I saw people out or about, like it was rarely like people like would know it a bit and recognize it and whatnot, but it was never like something that I knew like people were always on. It wasn't like the Naruto's and Dragon Ball Z's and whatnot. Like any boy, any guy you knew who like, fucking love Goku or Vegeta or whatever, yada yada. But it was rare. It was a rare occurrence to like find somebody who fucked with the Spike Spiegel type shit. Like,
who as anyone in America knows about Cowboy Bebop, this is why. Cartoon Network aired the show year after year without stopping. It's been run at least once every year since 2007, with HD remasters beginning in 2015. There's not a single other show that was aired that consistently for such a long period of time that allowed for a massive fan base to accumulate behind it. Cartoon Network didn't actually know how large of an audience it had gained, since the show never really produced exceptionally high numbers compared to any of the other anime. The first time they actually realized Cowboy Bebop had a large following was through complaints on the Adult Swim message boards. Messages like,
God, you guys have shown this for like a decade. everyone has seen Bebop. We all know Bebop is great. Why are you still showing it so much?
Without meaning to, and through a sheer love of the show, regardless of how well it did, the decision makers at Cartoon Network gave Cowboy Bebop so much exposure that had become a classic in the West simply because you couldn't get away from it. So many people have experienced it over the years. Multiple generations growing up and watching Adult Swim have had the chance to see Cowboy Bebop on TV. And even now that trend has continued with streaming. Cowboy Bebop is available on Crunchyroll, Funimation, Tubi, Netflix, Hulu, Sling TV, and YouTube TV. Its consistent airtime has naturally made it one of the first anime people saw as they became young adults. It's no wonder it's seen as a gateway anime. So many people saw it on Adult Swim growing up as their first anime, or for the first time they were watching something that wasn't shonen. I don't mean this to take away from the excellence of Cowboy Bebop's writing and animation, because it's absolutely there, but when you look at the full picture, it's an insane amount of luck and coincidence that got Cowboy Bebop to where it is. It's like the rails to success were being put one in front of the other for Cowboy Bebop, and we haven't even come to the most important piece that got the show made in the first place: Neon Genesis Evangelion. Some of you might be asking, where are you going with this? Some of you might be right on track. But Evangelion came out in 1995. It was just a few years before Cowboy Bebop. It was massively controversial and completely broke any mold for what was expected of an anime. Evangelion's success had a huge impact on TV anime as a whole. Ono was given massive control over the project as its creator, something incredibly uncommon in the 1980s, as anime was in a sharp decline due to Japan's economic crash. Companies were taking less risks on shows and refocusing TV anime on children's shows, while adults were mainly given limited-run VHS series that targeted hardcore otaku.
What does that sound like today? Like the gamifying of what they've done to like all the Teen Titan Go's and all this, how you get like fucking Thundercats Go, you get these like fucking even Dragon Ball Diamond to a degree, because even though with like, cause they did it with GT, so the only reason to pull it out again now is just for like, feels like for that same general feeling. But it's like, yeah, just babyfying a concept that's like, you know, been portrayed as like a more mature concept that people enjoy that aspect of, and then taking that main core point of it and ripping that out and then just giving them this just babyfied version of it and being like, yeah, but it's funny. It's like, I guess this isn't really like, but you still get your characters and they're funny. It's like, I mean, it's not really what we wanted, but someone is enjoying this, I guess, now. So it's just sad to see like that go out in that such a fizzle. Just hurts the soul.
Evangelion is often credited for the revitalization of the anime industry as a whole, because it proved that the space wasn't just for hardcore fans or kids. In 2 years, Eva sold $400 million worth of merchandise, making it a massive financial success, and at the same time proving that creators with more control and freedom to pursue their personal vision can create wildly successful results. That's inarguably the most important and consistent aspect of media that becomes truly impactful: artistic freedom and editorial independence. It's what we strive to create here on our own channel, going against the flow and creating what we want to see rather than what is expected of us. And it's only thanks to our Patreon that we're able to continue doing so, and only because of creator funding like Patreon that truly independent creators will continue to exist and push boundaries. In this world, you need to be a part of what you want to see, or it will be absorbed by the homogeneous mess of a JRPG final boss that is modern media. Be the difference. Check out a Patreon, and it would mean the world if you supported ours. But spinning it back, after Evangelion finished, there was this vacuum in anime to fill. There was now a very clear space for adult anime that could be incredibly successful, but nothing for that particular audience. Cowboy Bebop fits that mold perfectly. In addition to making that space for adult anime, Eva also drastically broke the stereotypes for anime characters. Instead of having a hothead protagonist like Naruto, you got Shinji, who's best described as a wet blanket. It made space for female characters that broke the typical mold of anime heroines. You got vastly different and beloved woman characters in Asuka as a tsundere and Rei as a mix between Dandere and Kudere. These breaks from stereotypes made room for characters like Spike, who is jaded, cynical, and brooding, as well as Faye, who you expect to be a love interest, but she's simply not. Instead, she's deeply emotionally flawed and no one's arm candy despite her looks. Without Evangelion, there likely wouldn't have been a place for Bebop to thrive.
Huh? I don't think that Evangelion just coming out before, because especially since this is 95 you're talking about, so this is already what, 5-6 years before Bebop even releases. And in that time frame, it's not like much more mature anime starts popping off like that. Like Evangelion is just because it's like a, such a center point in like certain anime in general, just because of how popular it is, because of like the storytelling, the concept, and everything that it's portraying. I think it's just because of the fact that there was a whole audience of people that hadn't been being catered to up until that point. And Evangelion was like one of the first concepts that really like played that off so well and went so hard into that type of concept, like such a, not only just adult theme, but like, because you have like adult stories where it comes like war, all that, like that's mainly what all the Gundam series have all been about. So it's not like they haven't been portraying like mature themes already, but like it was like with Evangelion, they were really going into like more interpersonal, like adult themed situations of like depression and like sacrifice. Like it was a lot of concepts and what's the word, and symbolism in that show that like piqued, I feel like, a lot of people's interest and scratched a lot of different itches, from the action portion of it, the mystery portion of it, and then just the outright audacity of like the actual story itself was so unique in the span of like what you had gotten, especially like you said at the time where like everything had been so diluted at that point, because you still had like some pretty good hitters back then, that still like were well written and everything, but like you said, like they had this whole section of it where like the stories were being like dumbified and babified and everything. So seeing something like Evangelion, like really, that's why it popped off so fast. But I don't think just because Evangelion came out that Cowboy Bebop and all that wouldn't have done as well. I feel like if anything, like it was a matter of like when and how those more mature storylines got in front of the right audience and everything. Because you're saying like 95, where did Evangelion premiere actually on? Because like you said, the main issue you had with Cowboy Bebop is that you had nowhere that these type of shows were being shown, like where this audience was, the audience for this show would be like collecting in that sense. I guess I'm seeing, assuming though, like because like since those studios weren't making as much of these stories at this point, that's what influenced the making of Cowboy Bebop. I don't think I follow that thread fully, but I see what you mean.
for something new to be explored down the line. I've put all this together to show just how insane this series of events, luck, and timing was for Cowboy Bebop to become such a beloved classic. It took Evangelion making the space for adult anime right before Bebop, a sponsor pulling out, the right sponsor coming in to fund the project that specifically focused on distribution in North America, the right voice director that gave the actors time and specifically went against the grain of normal anime voices, Cartoon Network deciding to hold off showing Cowboy Bebop until Adult Swim was creating Adult Swim in the first place so there was a place for Bebop to air uncut, and then deciding to run the show every year since its release in the US. That is an absolutely insane amount of luck and timing that gave Cowboy Bebop the opportunity to become as beloved as it is, and I truly believe that if even one of these things didn't happen, we wouldn't know Cowboy Bebop the way we do today. That being said, there's still...
I mean, but then in saying that, that means that then Neon Genesis wouldn't have been what it is today, because if Adult Swim, again, isn't made, Neon Genesis doesn't make it to the Western audience. Like, sure, it might pop off in Japan as it did, but then it's still not as important now. And especially because of how close in time frame those two stories coincide. Not to say they might not have gotten any inspiration from Neon Genesis or whatnot. And I could kind of see what you mean with, like, since like maybe somebody got the idea like, oh well, now more people are enjoying adult themed stories, we can tell this story or whatnot. But I feel like Cowboy Bebop, if it hadn't already been a thought at that point already, because at that point that would mean that the manga would have at least had to have been created. Let me see. Yeah, like I feel like that show still gets made even without Neon Genesis, because it wasn't just a matter of this like an adult, like the theming of like following these darker themes. It was like the actual feel and sound, because like yes, all these things do kind of tie into like once the anime gets made and everything, and like how like, you know, it becomes jazz influenced and inspired and everything, but the actual like story and like storytelling of it all in the first place is already so wildly different than what, you know, Neon Genesis even was trying to do. Like these themes sure are more adult adult centric, and the themes are a lot darker, but I feel like with an almost absolute certainty that without Neon Genesis, Cowboy Bebop, at least in the manga series, still gets made. As far as like anime, possibly, like I said, with the decline they were going through at the time, and without Neon Genesis popping off at that point, I mean, the show did come out like a few years, like 2 years later after it, so it could have caused a spike a little later, possibly, but that's all. It's neither here nor there, or whatever. But yeah, with the like styles of like Afrofuturism and everything that they have in the stories, the noir aspects and everything, there were way more. There was way more different. There was so many different aspects that went into like the actual creation of like the baseline for Cowboy Bebop that doesn't even touch anything Neon Genesis was doing. Like that it, like I said, besides like some of the darker themed areas it was going for, it seemed like this was always going to be something that was made to begin with. Now, all the luck as far as like the show getting made, definitely like that was some predestined shit right there. Like the world knew Cowboy Bebop needed to be made.
One more aspect to the show that led to its success, and that of course is the show itself. Watanabe wanted to design a show that would appeal to sophisticated adults. During the making of Cowboy Bebop, Watanabe would often inspire the animation team by telling them what they were working on would be something memorable up to 3 decades later, and that turned out not to be hubris. We're 25 years past Cowboy Bebop's initial release, and here I am making a video about it. And I'm certainly not the first, and I certainly won't be the last. Watanabe was looking to make something different and used a massive amount of inspiration from American cinema to create the setting and atmosphere of Cowboy Bebop. The noir style of storytelling, the Western influence, cowboys, these are things that resonate with an American audience. It was something familiar for them to latch onto. Even the way the sci-fi was done was more Americanized. Again, giant robots were the norm in Japan, but in the West, we had Star Wars and Star Trek, Babylon 5 and Blade Runner. All our sci-fi was about dudes and spaceships. It made Bebop's overall premise easy for American audiences to relate to. But most importantly, the characters were deep, flawed, and they felt real. There's an obvious and palpable vulnerability in every character. Ed's feelings of abandonment by her father, Faye's struggle with never feeling like she belongs, Jet's betrayal from people he cares about, and of course Spike chasing after a lost love, betrayed by a friend, and running from his past. Cowboy Bebop has something for everyone who is going through or has gone through a difficult section in life. There's at least one character and at least one episode that feels like it's directed at you, and more importantly, telling your story. It's a mirror to yourself, but it hurts less because you get to look inside at an arm's length. The stars aligned for Cowboy Bebop to be a success. So many things went the way they needed to for that show to have the reach and fan base that it does, but all that luck only created the opportunity for it to succeed at the scale it has. The show's ability to draw people in and make them fall in love with the story is what kept Cartoon Network running it every year. For something to consistently do as well as it did, not sharp top, not do, gangbusters, but for every year for the show to continually do as well as it did the year before is kind of insane if you think about it. The stage was set for a juggernaut of anime to come through and make a lasting impact. It could have been any show that tried to fill that void, but I don't think that means that any show would have succeeded. Cowboy Bebop filled that space because it's the show that fit in that moment of time perfectly, and it might always be that show. It hit every angle needed to become a monstrous success within that storm of circumstances. It feels almost serendipitous in retrospect, like Bebop was meant to be made for an audience to truly introduce the United States to anime in a way it never had before. I don't think it would be remiss to call Cowboy Bebop the most influential anime of our time.
Ooh,
but what's truly incredible is the insane story of how it got to where it is today.
Bonsai Pop. Wild history behind Cowboy Bebop. And that's why, like, unless you do, like, the proper respect, because I feel like the only ones that are kind of doing that, at least doing that, to the best of their ability so far is, the One Piece live action remake, currently. Because they have Oda actually involved, so you actually have that person that has that, like, that thought process behind, like, oh no, let's take our time with this, let's actually, like, get this setting correct, and like how this world is actually going to feel in a live action aspect. You have that feeling because, like he said, with the anime, for one, the anime could have gone left so easily. But because of, like, all these contributing factors that came to it, especially once it came to the US and everything, and, like, just to find out that, like, the showrunner didn't even think that anybody was going to even be watching the show in the first place, and still decided to, like, oh, so let's just take our time with this and, like, change it up. If anything, like, really get arty with it. Like, let's like really put our foot in this bitch if nobody's going to watch it. That's crazy. Like, you wouldn't, in most cases, you would think it'd be the opposite. People thought process go. They were like, oh, nobody's going to see this, so we just call it in. We're just going to phone it in. But no, like, they put their whole foot in that, and, like, literally made one of the, like, classics of the time that they thought would never even get watched, and was then put on syndication for 30 fucking years straight almost. So yeah, it's like that's why I feel like it was never a real good chance for the live action to do so well as well, because it was just never unless it was like a lifetime fan of it, and which is never usually is. It's always somebody who's like, probably hasn't even read or watched most of the actual source material. They've just, gotten um a show bible of like what like all the characters and who was in it and whatnot, and just like everything is like in black and white, and so they take it and then they just run with how they view, how they interpret it from there, versus like doing the actual research to take in like, oh, the aspect of the show, the manga, how it even became to be in the first place and everything, and like what these actual stories entail. Like I feel like you shouldn't be able to make a remake without like consulting with the like, or the owner or like the maker of the show, especially like, and then like even with that you get like instances where like they end up like the showrunner or like the creator end up leaving the project due to creative differences, meaning that like, oh, these things weren't listening to me, so why am I even here? I'm not about to sit here watch them butcher my shit, and then try to blame me for it. Like it's always like they know best because of like the medium that they're trying to put it in. So like that's why like the remake of Cowboy Bebop felt so, especially to me, felt so flat. Like it just, the tone was completely off, and like the aspect of it all, like they were trying to go for like this big campy like Americanized like actiony version. Like yeah, and especially like in every episode, like you have like those moments where you could kind of go off of that, and it wasn't hitting, and then the story changes and all that. I'm not gonna go into all that, but yeah. um Amazing video, thank you Bonsai Simp. Oh my god, Bonsai Pop. um We love a good Cowboy Bebop plays here and there. Like I said, even if without it being your favorite anime, like it really doesn't have to be. Like I said, like even with the hearing, like it's just it did well for those 25 years. Not even like it was like popping off like that. Like I said, like it's just a good story and good character development in general. Like, and that's what I feel like is so great about it. Just like everything's so evergreen with it that it's just like, and especially for it to be one of the first things that I experienced while it came on, I can just go back to that at any point and still feel those same feelings, and to a degree, not necessarily like to the same degree when I first watched it, of course, but like then seeing people, and especially when I recommend or have people watch it and seeing them and like, oh shit, this is actually like the storytelling story. Yeah, like yeah, this shit is, and like you said, every episode has something for anybody. And they really like spice that up with each episode, stretching out to a different section of like the, what would you call it? I wouldn't say disenfranchised, but like, misunderstood, the loners, like just very melancholy as people in a sense, but it has its comedic moments and it has its fun at the same time. And it just, it was too many miracles that like lined up at once to make it what it was, for a live action director to come through and think that they were gonna do anything to give it justice. There was just too much that, because it was not like it was like one person that did this and like, okay, well, all you had to do is like copy paste. Like even if and especially as far as like the real versus animated style goes, you can't really do the one-to-one anyways. But like it was too much in the mix to recreate the recipe. That's the sense. No way to reverse engineer something like that. But yeah, so that was the wild history behind Cowboy Bebop. Like I said, I knew I was gonna be yapping in this. So we might say the philosophy of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood for another time, for the next talk. Cause Jesus, that's gonna be a lot. So we might hop into the games here now. But all right, YouTube, thanks for stopping in. If y'all like the nostalgic reacts to some of these anime, you want me to, if you have a deep dive of any other shows you want to watch, I definitely have a good list that we're gonna get through here. for these as well. So definitely hype for that. And then yeah, we'll hopefully be hopping back in this Salsa Versus soon as well. I want to try to gamify that more, make that like more possible for me to be able to do here on live as well. But that's gonna be kind of tricky with, you know, what we watch. So we'll see what I can do. But yeah, YouTube, I will catch y'all later. Thanks for stopping in. And yeah, see ya.